Something big is happening behind closed doors. And this time, it's not rumor. It's reality. In a packed Toronto conference room, filled with diplomats, executives, and cameras flashing like lightning, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick leaned into the microphone and said something that froze every Canadian official in their seats. His words were blunt, unapologetic, and unmistakable. For the United States, it will always be America's auto industry first, and then any other. The room went silent. The meaning was crystal clear. Washington wasn't talking partnership anymore. It was talking priority. For decades, Canada and the United States built cars together. Parts crossed the border 6, sometimes 7 times before a single vehicle rolled off the line. It was one of the most integrated manufacturing systems on Earth, a symbol of North American cooperation. And now, the man representing Donald Trump's economic agenda had just declared that cooperation obsolete. Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't mince words either. After hearing Lutnick's remarks firsthand, he called it a massive threat. Because if America pulls production south, thousands of Canadian jobs go with it, from the assembly plants in Windsor to the steel mills in Hamilton. The warning wasn't theoretical. It was a shot across the bow. While Ford was sounding alarms in Ontario, another message, very different in tone, arrived in Ottawa. It came from China's ambassador to Canada, and it wasn't a threat. It was an offer. China was ready to remove its crushing tariffs on Canadian canola, the same tariffs that had cost farmers billions, but there was one condition. Canada had to drop its 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. 2 messages. 2 superpowers. 1 crossroads. One says, obey us or lose your industry. The other says, work with us and rebuild your economy. And right now, Canada stands right in the middle, squeezed between Washington's pressure and Beijing's proposition.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
The timing couldn't be more brutal. Canadian farmers are already struggling under retaliatory tariffs. Prairie provinces are watching silos fill with unsold canola. Taxpayer money is being pumped into subsidies just to keep them afloat. All this because Ottawa decided to mirror Washington's protectionist playbook, a move that pleased the White House but punished the prairies. Howard Lutnick's speech made something painfully obvious: the U.S. isn't protecting North American jobs, it's protecting American jobs. And when he says, move manufacturing south, he means taking it from Canada. This isn't diplomacy. This is economic warfare in slow motion. But then comes China's move, precise, calculated, and enticing. Their ambassador looks straight into the camera during an interview and says it clearly. If Canada removes the unjustified tariffs on Chinese EVs, China will reciprocate by removing tariffs on Canadian agricultural products. Simple. Direct. Transactional. And for Canada, potentially transformational. Imagine reopening that canola market worth billions. Imagine lower EV prices, new investments, jobs in manufacturing plants that could rise again in Windsor or Oshawa, not as American subsidiaries, but as Canadian-built EV hubs tied into global supply chains. It's not a fantasy. It's an opening. But there's a problem, a deep one. Canada's trade policy has become reactive instead of strategic. Every time Washington makes a move, Ottawa mirrors it, even when it hurts our own industries. That's how we ended up in this mess, copying Trump's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs without any clear gain in return. The result? China retaliated. Farmers bled. Consumers paid higher prices. And while the U.S. tightened its grip, Canada lost leverage. Tom Mulcair summed it up perfectly: Canada didn't create this problem, it copied it. And copying someone else's economic strategy never ends well. Now, for the first time in decades, Canada's loyalty to Washington is being tested, not by diplomacy but by survival. The U.S. is pulling production away, and China is offering to fill the economic vacuum. So which way do we turn? If Ottawa caves to U.S. pressure again, the pattern continues: more dependency, fewer options, and weaker sovereignty. If Canada takes the Chinese offer, it risks angering Washington, but gains the chance to diversify and rebuild. Neither path is easy. But one is clearly Canada's own. Behind every political speech and press release, the real question isn't about tariffs or trade deals, it's about identity. Who are we as a country? A follower or a leader? A satellite orbiting Washington's economy, or a sovereign nation charting its own course? As Trump's Commerce Secretary threatens to strip Canadian jobs and China's ambassador extends a hand of negotiation, one truth is unavoidable. Canada has to decide what kind of nation it wants to be, dependent or decisive. Because history is repeating itself, and every Canadian watching knows how this story usually ends: we bend, we follow, and we pay the price. But maybe not this time. Maybe this time, Canada finally says, enough. The debate inside Ottawa is heating up like never before. Ministers whisper about strategic patience, analysts warn of diplomatic consequences, and yet outside Parliament, people aren't talking about geopolitics. They're talking about survival, jobs, groceries, fuel, and futures. In Windsor, workers fear the same story replaying again. First it was steel. Then aluminum. Now cars. Each time Washington tightens its belt, Canada feels the chokehold. Factories close. Families scatter. Politicians promise stability, but stability never comes. Because every time Canada plays by someone else's rules, the game changes, and not in our favor. When Howard Lutnick said the U.S. auto industry comes first, he wasn't being reckless. He was revealing a doctrine. Under Trump, America First isn't just a slogan, it's a policy weapon. One designed to pull production, profit, and power back home. And Canada? It's collateral damage. But while Washington is busy pulling away, Beijing is watching patiently. When China's ambassador offered to lift canola tariffs in exchange for Canada lifting its EV tariffs, he didn't need to threaten. He offered leverage. A trade of equals, not subjects. A deal that could free billions in lost revenue and jumpstart a stalled EV transition. Yet in Ottawa, hesitation lingers. Why? Because every official knows the unspoken rule: you don't anger the United States. That fear of backlash, of isolation, has shaped Canadian policy for generations. But what has it earned us? Dependence. Disappointment. Decline. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. Canada's greatest weakness isn't geography. It's timidity. We keep calling ourselves independent, but every trade move screams otherwise. Meanwhile, the world is moving on. Europe is electrifying. Asia is innovating. The United States is subsidizing its industry through massive protectionist spending. And Canada? We're waiting, again, for permission. But what if we stopped waiting? Imagine a different Canada. A Canada that doesn't copy tariffs but creates opportunity. Where Chinese EV manufacturers are invited to build plants here, using Canadian labor, powered by Canadian minerals, sold across North America under Canadian standards. We could turn a foreign threat into a domestic triumph: jobs, innovation, and a rebirth of our manufacturing heartland. That's not dependency. That's strategy. It's the same vision our leaders once had when Canada built its first railways, its first energy grids, its first industries. Back then, we weren't asking for permission. We were building a future. Right now, we're at the same turning point. Do we keep playing Washington's echo? Or do we write our own sound? Because let's be honest, the America First policy leaves no room for Canada also. It's about dominance, not partnership. And when a U.S. Commerce Secretary openly says manufacturing should move south, that's not friendly competition. That's economic annexation in slow motion. If Canada continues mirroring those tariffs, the damage won't just be financial, it'll be cultural. We'll lose faith in our own ability to lead. We'll become a nation defined not by our choices, but by our compliance. But if we take China's offer, not blindly, not submissively, but strategically, we send a message. Canada will negotiate, not imitate. We'll cooperate, not capitulate. Lifting those EV tariffs doesn't mean surrendering to China. It means prioritizing Canadians, our farmers, our workers, our future. It means reopening global markets while defending our autonomy. It means recognizing that sovereignty is not about who we defy, it's about who we decide to be. And make no mistake, this decision will define the next decade. Because this isn't just a trade story. It's the story of a nation rediscovering its voice. The US can pull its factories south. China can tempt with tariffs. But the only real power in this equation lies with Ottawa, if it dares to use it. Picture it, new EV plants rising in Ontario, powered by Canadian minerals from the north. Farmers in Saskatchewan shipping canola freely again to booming Asian markets. Families finally affording electric vehicles built with Canadian hands. That's not fantasy. It's possibility, if we choose it. But that choice requires courage. The courage to face Washington and say, our loyalty is not for sale. The courage to face Beijing and say, our partnership will be on Canadian terms. The courage to finally admit that playing both sides isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Because the world isn't waiting for Canada anymore. It's competing for what Canada has: resources, stability, innovation, and credibility. And right now, those are slipping through our fingers. Every crisis brings a chance. This one is ours. So when the next press conference comes, when the cameras flash and the microphones line up, Canadians should be listening for one thing: not fear, not apology, but resolve. A simple statement that could change everything. Canada will no longer follow. We will lead. That's the line that should echo across Parliament Hill, from Windsor to Winnipeg, from Vancouver to St. John's. Because the day Canada stops copying and starts creating, that's the day we become a true economic power, not a junior partner. So yes, this story began with threats and tariffs, but it ends with something far more powerful: a chance to define who we are. To choose jobs over obedience. Independence over imitation. To prove, once and for all, that Canada is not an extension of anyone else's economy. We are our own. The US has made its stance clear. China has laid its cards on the table. Now it's Canada's turn. Not to react. To decide. Because in a world of superpowers, leadership doesn't come from size. It comes from sovereignty. And the moment Canada claims that, the world will have to listen. This is Canada today, where the story isn't about the storm between America and China anymore. It's about how Canada finally found the strength to stand in the middle and say, we don't take sides. We take charge.
Canada debates.